Hello everyone, happy 2024. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas. I know I did, even if it was a little short. I wanted to come on today and talk about some of the movies that I watched in 2023. Because being an adult for the first time, I all of a sudden had a ton of free time. And a lot of that free time I used to watch movies. And I especially tried to watch movies that I'd never seen before. It helps that my roommate Isabella also loves movies, and I would just bring up that I've never seen a movie before, and we'd just watch it. So that was honestly really great. So these are all from my Letterboxd. I'll link my Letterboxd in the description if you want to see all of the movies that I watched this year. But I'm going to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, have some honorable mentions, and then talk about one. And this is your full spoiler warning for this video. If I talk about a movie you haven't seen and you want to yet, spoiler alert. I will be talking about these movies and the things that happen in them, so just giving you a fair heads up that I will be talking about spoilers in this video. So number 5 is All Quiet on the Western Front, which is a movie following a German soldier in World War I, kind of as he journeys along in the war. And I watched this movie over spring break last year when I had the time to actually sit down and watch a kind of an intense movie and be able to process it. I really enjoyed this movie. I was initially interested in it because it won Best Original Score at the Academy Awards last year. And so I wanted to see what was up. And it was really good, really intense, really scary, really realistic. And that made all of it so compelling, following the German soldier, because usually World War I movies or war movies in general that are made for an American audience follow the Americans or the British or whatever. And this movie follows the German soldiers, and I just thought that was such an interesting point of view. I know that All Quiet on the Western Front has been around for forever, but this was the first time for me experiencing it that way. And it was really just tragically beautiful. I really enjoyed following Paul on his adventures. One of the scenes that sticks out to me the most was the scene where tanks enter the battlefield for the first time. And I can only imagine what that was like for those poor Germans to see a tank and not understand what it is or what to do with it. Yeah, I thought that the movie, it was a little bit long, but in a good way. So we were able to experience the full gambit of what was happening during that point in history and how these soldiers were just trying to survive. So I highly recommend it. It was a little bit difficult to watch. I'm glad I picked a night where I could sit down and decompress after I had watched it. But I can just remember that I haven't really seen anything like it, especially from that German point of view. So All Quiet on the Western Front, number 5. Number 4 is The Breakfast Club. I had never seen The Breakfast Club, and granted, I watched that movie in January of last year, so it has been a minute since I've seen it. And I don't know why we decided to do it this way, but we hosted a women-only movie night for everyone to come watch this movie without really knowing what it was about. So hindsight being 2020, probably would not have done that again. But it was actually a really wonderful night, and the movie is really good. I don't really know what I was expecting. It's kind of one of those teen movies that was just such a classic, and I just knew the part at the end where he does that. But I loved how simple this movie was. I love how character focused it was. It was really just a character study on the kids that are stuck in detention for the day. Just really interesting to see them talk about their lives and how their personalities interact with each other and how different they are, and yet how their circumstance brought them together. I just thought was really interesting. I love the scene where they're sitting at the top of the library and they just talk. They talk for a very long time, and they're just telling each other about how they ended up in detention that day and what their lives look like. And it was a really kind of a beautiful way to slow down and to really examine what teenagers go through, that you're not quite an adult and you're not quite a kid, so you really don't know where you are in life. And to be able to just sit and watch them explore that and explore how different they are and how their similarities, and just what life is throwing at them and their hope. It's just so good. I really loved yeah, the slower pace and just the conversations. It's not really an action-filled movie. It's just really beautifully slow and classic, and I can understand why it is such a classic, and I don't know what took me so long to get around to it, but I highly recommend it. Again, a little bit risque. They talk about some interesting topics, and there's some like sexual innuendos, fun stuff like that, but just a really compelling movie. I really enjoyed it. All right, on the complete other end of the spectrum, number 3 for me was The Batman. So we watched this, Isabella and I watched this a couple months ago, and honestly I was watching it during a really difficult period in my life, so it was really good to just like have this beautiful piece of art to just distract me from everything. So this is the Robert Pattinson Batman, and the idea being that it's like a younger Batman, so he's kind of just started his vigilantism, and like that's all that matters to him. And I think the thing that I liked the most about this movie was it was leaned into the world's greatest detective part of Batman rather than like the action-y part. Like obviously there's so much action, but I really loved that it was just a detective story, that we were just following Batman as he was like trying to put together the pieces of the Riddler and solve a genuine mystery. And I think Robert Pattinson was an amazing Batman. He had just the look and just like the heft, the angst. It was really, really compelling Batman, because I feel like Batman can be a one-dimensional character if he's just like really grumpy all the time and just justice, you know? And Robert Pattinson is a little bit like that, but like it comes from a place of like, oh, I don't want to say toxic masculinity, but kind of toxic masculinity, of just like having these feelings, and instead of dealing with your feelings, going and beating people up in a Batman suit. But I really loved the design of the movie. I really loved kind of the slow unfolding of the plot. I loved Robert Pattinson, who was just phenomenal in this movie. And I can't remember who plays Catwoman, but she was also very good. Yeah, and just like watching, again, almost like a character exploration as Batman is beginning to figure out like who he is, and realizing at the end of the movie that like the people don't need a symbol of fear, they need a symbol of hope, was really cool. So I hope that Robert Pattinson makes more Batman movies, because I would love to see more of the evolution of this character. Okay, number 2 might be shocking that it's not at number 1, but when I get to number 1, I'll explain it. My number 2 favorite movie that I saw last year was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So I'll get to the reason why this is my number 2, because my number 1 was insane. But this was one of the best movies I think I've ever seen in my whole life. I adore this movie. So it's the continuation of Into the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales, and just the soundtrack of the movie, the visual design of the movie, the characters, just the way that the plot unfolds is just so masterful. Oh my gosh, it's such a stunning movie. I'm beginning to sense a little bit of a theme with a lot of the movies that I enjoyed this past year, was just how slow they were, how they like took the time to explore character, how they took the time to like really let characters' choices like sink in, and like really began to expand on more of a character-based storytelling rather than action. Into the Spider-Verse, I think, is in my top 5 favorite movies of all time, and I'm also just a huge Spider-Man fan. I was a Spider-Man fan before it was cool. I like read Spider-Man comics in high school, so I loved seeing all of the different Spider-Man in this movie, especially Ben Reilly. I love that man. He's just the best. He's so emo. I really loved Miguel O'Hara as an antagonist, because they set him up like in the first movie, which was so exciting, but then to see him fleshed out was just so cool. I also love Oscar Isaac with all my heart, so there's that. And to see just like his need for order and his need for things to be the way they're supposed to be, because he's lived a life where he tried to change it, was just really cool. And then also The Spot is just like one of the best like surprise I'm actually a real bad guy villains ever. So I'm really excited to see what happens next there because it ends on such a fantastic cliffhanger. And I knew it was part one. It was really funny in my theater at the end. Everybody just went, what? And it was just so fun to get to experience that. I feel like a lot of people have fallen in love with Spider-Man because of these movies, and that makes me so happy because Spider-Man has really been through it. My man is really just like had the hardest time, like one of the most tragic superheroes ever, and it's Spider-Man, which is just so funny. And so to have people come in as a less casual fan of Spider-Man and to get to see myself so represented, oh my gosh, and then seeing like Spider-Man from the PS4 game because he is the love of my life. And yeah, I really love what they're doing, and I have very, very high hopes for this second part of this movie. Also, Gwen Stacy was my favorite before everybody else. It was her favorite, so I'm just throwing that out there. I was a fan first. Not to be like I liked it before it was cool, but also to kind of be like I liked it before it was cool. So before I talk about my number one movie, I wanted to throw out some honorable mentions. So a couple of movies that I watched this year and I really liked, but not quite enough to fit into my my top 5. So maybe this is more of like my top 10. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem was a really surprisingly fun movie. I took my brother Gabe for his birthday to go see it because I was interested in the animation, but it actually ended up being like a really fun just story, like super fun, super enjoyable, lots of great action, great characters. I loved how the turtles were voiced by actual teenagers and made it realistic in that way. So really just a fun movie. If you have a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. It's really good. I saw Avatar for the first time this year, like the Blue People Avatar, which was kind of wild that I'd never seen it before. It was a really good movie. I enjoyed it. I don't quite get the hype around it or like why it's so important. I haven't seen the sequel yet, so it's on my list. But I thought it was really great, especially knowing the innovation of the world building and the motion capture. I thought that was really cool, and the story was just really cool too. I like it was just a fun movie to watch. I enjoyed it. I watched all of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies for the first time this year, so I'm gonna count that whole trilogy as one because I love Spider-Man. And actually my favorite movie out of those 3 was Spider-Man 3 because I don't know, everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's the worst movie ever, you shouldn't watch it, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that emo Spider-Man was just like the best thing in the whole world. He does like a little, I'm gonna demonstrate, when he's emo he does like this little bang flip oh my gosh, it was so just campy, but like that's what Spider-Man is, man. Spider-Man is so dumb at some points. So I really enjoyed watching those movies and experiencing Spider-Man through Sam Raimi. He's a phenomenal director, and I liked some of the horror elements, especially in Spider-Man 2, that were just really good. Dune I saw for the first time this year, and I love me a Chosen One narrative. I just love like you are the one stories. You're the one that the prophecy is speaking of, whatever. This movie was absolutely stunning. Again, I liked the slower pace a little bit. We really got to like spend time with the characters as they are navigating this like really amazingly well-built world. I'm hoping to read the Dune book this year before the second part of the movie comes out. Again, Oscar Isaac has my heart forever. Thought he was phenomenal in that movie. It's definitely not for everyone, but because it has so many of the tropes that I enjoy, I really liked it, and I'm excited for the sequel to come out this year. And then finally, I'm counting all of these as one movie. Also, I saw the first 3 Indiana Jones movies for the first time last year, which I don't know how I missed Indiana Jones because it's Steven Spielberg, it's Harrison Ford, who I adore. It's just fun, easy action that's not too difficult to understand. Marion, I think, is my favorite female protagonist ever. She was so well written and like was tough but allowed to be funny and allowed to be feminine. Oh gosh, I love those movies just for Marion alone. Even though she's only in the first one, like oh my gosh, she was amazing. I want to be her when I grow up. And then of course just like Harrison Ford, and those movies are so intricately woven and designed, and the way that just bold in the way that they tell their stories. Those movies are just a lot of fun, and I can understand why they are the classics. I haven't seen Crystal Skull or Dial of Doom or Dial of Destiny, whatever it is, but I'm going to get to those. Get ready, strap in, because I'm about to talk about my number one movie that I saw for the first time last year, and that movie is Shutter Island. So this was a movie I'd never heard of before until this screenwriting podcast called Beyond the Screenplay I listened to covered it. They were doing like an auteur autumn or something like that, and they were covering Martin Scorsese before Killers of the Flower Moon. And so I went into this movie completely blind. I had no idea what it was about, what any of the plot was. All I knew is that Leonardo DiCaprio was in it, and then Mark Ruffalo was also in it, so that was kind of fun to see them because I like them both. They're actors that like I don't have to like who they are in real life, but I do enjoy watching them work. Like I do enjoy seeing them in movies. And so the basic premise of this movie is that Leonardo DiCaprio's character is like a detective, and he and his partner are going into this insane asylum to discover because a very dangerous patient has escaped. And this movie has just so many twists and turns. It's so like well paced and thought out. Every answer leads to another mystery, and you're kind of following these characters as they're trying to figure out the disappearance of this woman. And all of this also is undercut by Leo's character having these nightmares about his wife, about his dead wife, and how he's like looking particularly for this man who he thinks is the reason why his wife died. And so this is your final spoiler warning, because this movie is so worth going into completely blind. So I'm gonna give you one last warning. If you want to be absolutely astounded by this movie, go watch it first, and then let me come back and let me talk about the end, because it's insane. So I pride myself in being able to guess movies pretty well. I can guess the end of a movie, I can guess a twist. My friends hate this about me, that I'll watch a movie with them and I'll say something and then they'll just be like, oh, lie. But I've watched enough movies and like know enough about them that I can read movies pretty well. So I could typically figure out what's gonna happen right before it happens. This movie bamboozled me in a way that I was never expecting. So this whole time, Leo's character has been hunting for this man who supposedly burned down his apartment building and killed his wife. And then it's revealed at the end that Leo is not a detective. He is the man that killed his wife. He is a patient at the insane asylum, and he basically created this whole identity for himself so that he's not the one that killed his wife. And so, oh my gosh, I did not see this twist coming at all, because it comes after this really intense moment where you think he finally has discovered the evil that is in this facility that he thought has been there this whole time, and you get confronted with like the director of the asylum, and then also Mark Ruffalo's character, who's actually Leo's doctor, like his psychiatrist, and they've like created this whole elaborate experiment where Leo like got to live out this fantasy and to see if he could like remember who he was. And so we have this whole flashback of how it's really dark, how his wife went crazy and drowned their 3 kids, and then Leo killed his wife, and then he went crazy. And so this whole time we've been following the bad guy. Like we've been rooting for the bad guy. And as this was happening, as this was getting put together, I was like on the edge of my seat, my hands over my face, like could not believe that this was happening. This was an insane movie. And so then you're kind of like, Leo kind of like readmits who he is, but then at the very end of the movie, he kind of reverts back to his detective persona. So you don't actually know if he stayed okay or if he went back to, or I mean not okay, went like stayed in his state of mind where he understood that he's the one that he killed his wife, or if he went back to that detective persona where he admits that like he won't admit that he is insane. And so, yeah, I think this whole video was just an excuse for me to rant about Shutter Island, because that movie came out of nowhere for me in just a way I did not expect. There you have it. Those are my top 5 plus some favorite movies that I saw in 2023 for the first time. Not necessarily movies that came out in 2023, but what I saw for the first time. So if you want to see the rest of the movies that I watched, I'll link my Shutterbox in the description. Go ahead, like this video, leave a comment. Have you seen any of these movies before? Have you seen Shutter Island? Were you as bamboozled by it as I was? What was your favorite movie that you saw in 2023? What's a movie that you're really looking for in 2024? I know I have a couple that I'm really excited for. So yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and go watch some movies. Bye.